Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome, everybody. This is Critical Failure, and you are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Oh, yeah. Thanksgiving's a-coming. It sure is. All right, boys and girls, let's kick things off with another track off of the top 40 of the 8-Bit Collective, Best of 8-Bit Collective, courtesy of Hemrock. We're at track number 38. This is Darius Carlin, a name that popped up quite a bit on those charts, with Mother B. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. I spent the morning playing Soul Calibur 6 because this past weekend on Steam was a Bandai Namco sale, and I was flipping through all the games and stuff, and I didn't pick up any new base games, but I've had Soul Calibur 6 in my library for a long time now, and I haven't played it much. So I went over to check out the DLC because one of my, biggest pet peeves with fighting games today is they, all the characters are DLC now, and Soul Calibur 6 is very much an offender of this. So, but it's been out for a while, so when there's a sale, you can go pick everything up for a couple of dollars. So 2 season passes, not 1, but 2. So I picked up the first one for like $8. Added on a few characters, added on a bunch extra costume parts you can use for custom characters. Alright, so we'll jump back into Soul Calibur 6 and give it a shot. So I played through the arcade mode, not to be confused with the story mode, because I'm pretty sure that game has a fairly rich story mode. I just haven't done that one myself yet. It was a good time. I really enjoyed myself, but it's still Soul Calibur. I guess if that's the best way to put it. A couple years back, I went rampant collecting cheap PS2 games off of eBay, and one of the ones I picked up was Soul Calibur 2. Got a lot of play in my house. Enjoyed it very much. I don't think this is a whole lot different. I gotta say, I don't know. Maybe it's because I haven't played it a ton, so I'm not a lot of the minutia is lost on me. But yeah, this made me want to dust off my copy of Soul Calibur 4. That's another one I have in my house, the Xbox 360 version. This seemed an awful lot like that, just without Darth Vader at the end. But not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It's just, I don't know. I think these fighting games, right, I don't think they shine when you're playing by yourself. You're either going to be into like the multiplayer fight scene, or you got to have friends who play them or something like that. Sitting down and playing a fighting game just isolated by yourself. I mean, there's some games that do that very well. Fighting games I don't think are among them. So part of me thinks that playing Soul Calibur 6 this morning was like, I was kind of doomed from the get-go, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. It was okay, I guess. How much does the base game go for now? Yeah, on sale it's 90% off, so the base game is $6. It's worth $6 for sure. DLC was a bit of a waste, though. Give me a second here. So this past week, there's been a lot of preparation on my end for Tiger Fest. Having a little private get-together between Hemrock, Sendu, and myself. It's going to be sometime in the future. Going to do the old school sleepover deal, kind of get an Airbnb and play games late into the wee hours of the evening. So there's some preparation when something like this comes about, and it's like, what are you going to play? What are you going to bring? Time is limited, so got to make the most of it. And one of the things that Hemrock and I have been going back and forth about for a long time is the MS-DOS, not MS-DOS, but the floppy disk magazine. Hemrock put together like a proof of concept that you can pick up off of the Discord, which I want to make a video about because he's got some really good stuff on there. Well, I started putting a similar proof of concept together that I'm going to distribute when we do our Tiger Fest, because it's just going to be the three of us. I ordered some discs, I'll make 3 copies and whatever. Now, my interest in this thing has been in content creation. Let's see what we can get on this that you can't get anywhere else. And some of the things that Hemrock has, one in particular, is the notion of jetpack levels. Jetpack's a fun game. It's a side-scroller. It's a single-screen side-scroller from the MS-DOS days. In terms of creativity, it's a pretty simple game to play. And it's the only game for MS-DOS that I have played on a portable handheld that I have actually enjoyed. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can get rid of the static real quick. There we go. Yeah, I got that running on a couple of different handheld devices so that I could build levels. Well, I started building a level pack for Tiger Fest. That should be pretty cool. I also have a big interest in text adventures, as I'm sure you're aware, because the dream game that I'm working on is a text adventure. So there's a program called Text World, which is a text adventure builder for MS-DOS. Interestingly enough, it came out in the early 2000s, so it's not from the MS-DOS era, but I started building a little text adventure for the disc, because apparently with that thing you can make standalone games, which is really cool. A lot of the modern tools for building text adventures, you can't do that. Like Adrift is a great tool, but you can't, if I make a game for Adrift and I distribute it, you'd have to go download Adrift and then play it that way, which is fine, I guess, but I started work on a little text adventure, save CF from the cave. And the three of us are all hidden in a cave, and we're trying to get out. You got to go in and find us. Pretty simple thing. It's like, actually, I have the map right here. 13 rooms. There's 13 rooms, so you should be able to get through that pretty quickly. Text World does a pretty good job. It has it doesn't have a mini map, but it does have a compass on screen. So it's pretty easy to navigate. You should be able to get around without having to make a pen and paper map. So that's pretty cool. That's been fun to work on. And then the last thing is a custom ZZT world for Tigerfest, which has been a lot of fun to work on. Way more fun than I would have expected. You got to remember, ZZT was a big deal for me back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I'm not talking about the 90s when it was like new and out and, being distributed on diskettes. I'm talking about the 2000s, right? I was involved with the ZZT game scene in like 2005. Good times. And I was able to dig up a lot of unfinished projects, like ZZT projects, and put little bits of them into this little custom world, so you can go in and look around, and there's mini games and stuff, and all of that. A little text adventure and some ZZT, that text adventure and some jetpack levels all fits well inside of a diskette. And then I started working on a pinball construction set table, because that's another thing that Hemrock talked about. Pinball construction set itself is copyrighted, so we can't distribute it, but you can use it to create pinball tables standalone that you can distribute. So I made a little pinball table, not much to it yet, but I ran into an issue where when I would try and generate the standalone table, it would freeze. And I don't know if I've tried to do this like in DOSBox before. I've made pinball tables, sure, in DOSBox, but I don't know if I've actually tried to do the standalone bit. I used to do that all the time on my dad's copy of Pinball Construction Set, like when we actually had the floppy disk and we'd boot it up on the old luggable computer. I had a bunch, but it froze. So I have like the save file that's working, but you have to have Pinball Construction Set to play it. And yes, that Pinball Construction Set is available on every corner abandonware site. So I mean, I could distribute it on under those pretenses, but technically the construction set itself is not free. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that one. I might end up shelving that one and just focusing on making jetpack levels, because I wanted to do like an entire episode of jetpack. So like a pack of like 10 or 15 levels that you would put in and then run custom game, and then you'd play through them, and there would be a ramping difficulty. So they would chain together to make a game, as opposed to a few loose levels or whatever. So that's been that took up my attention for the majority of like the early part of the week. And then the build for the Dream game, which is now titled Local Mud, that was delivered after a month and a half, and I gotta say the guy did a really good job. It was really rough, but he sent me a test build that I could play with, and I played with it, and I sent him back a page of comments, and he made all those changes super fast, and then we did that routine twice more, and then finally I was like, look, this is good. As far as I'm concerned, this satisfies our original agreement. Let me play with it. Let me have the source code, and then I'll come back with a big list, and then I'll pay you to make those changes. So the next time I need your help, we'll negotiate another contract. And he was like, awesome. That sounds great. So yeah, that's where we're at. I have the build. I have the source code. Is it ready to, build a game on? No, of course not, because what he made is a functioning parser. That's what I paid him to make. So there's no... looking at the source code, I can see that the player does have stats, and there's a command that says stats that will display the player stats. But at this point, they don't do anything. Like, there's no monsters. There's no combat mechanics. I take it back. There is a monster, because there's one room where you do look and it says I'm a monster. So the monster does exist, but it doesn't. There's no combat mechanics. It won't do anything yet. So I have to figure out what my priority is next. Okay, what are the next things I want him to work on, and then I'll hire him to go around again. And that's where Local Mud is right now. It's an exciting time, and when that happened, and I'm in this intermediary period, I've started playing similar games because I want to have a handle on what finished games like this, what they're like, what are some ideas that I can bogart, what are some things that we can bring to the table. I want to get in that text adventure mindset. So I started playing Batmud, and I was playing that a little bit this morning. Batmud, and I know we've talked about this game in the previous episode or two, but it's a multi-user dungeon or mud. It's a text adventure, entirely text adventure. It's an MMO text adventure, but what makes it special is that it's the only one. Well, no, not the only one, but it's available on Steam for a reasonable price. I think there's another one that's really expensive, but you can get Batmud for $5 on Steam. And the Steam client that you get, the Mud client that you get when you get it off Steam, is very, very good. You don't have to have that to play it, so you can get Mudlet or one of the other like free Mud clients and connect to it that way. So not at all required for you to pay that $5, but so nice. So I've been playing that and walking around town and game and like looking at statistics and reading tutorials and just really getting the feel for it. And one of the priorities for me, for my game, is to have very, very low required tutorials. Because I am 4.9 hours into Batmud, and I'm still running tutorials. I'm still in the tutorial city. The way that game works is there's a city, and in the city there's like a certain amount of tutorials, and you go from one to the next to the next to the next. All the while fighting and leveling up and doing stuff, but still technically in the tutorial area. That's something I really want to work on. The flow of the first hour is a big deal. So rather than tutorials, here's 3 commands, go do this simple level with these 3 commands, then we'll introduce another, and then another, and then another. Which I guess technically is a tutorial, but I don't want to use that word anywhere if I can avoid it. Similar to Super Meat Boy, how the first few levels they're easy because they're used to teach you mechanics. That's the design philosophy I want to follow. Because a lot of these Mud games were designed like 20 years ago, particularly Batmud. That's been around since 1990, which is that 30 years ago? That's 30 years ago. So I don't know what during that time this tutorial area that I'm in has been developed, but man, it's brutal. So that's one thing, and then there's other with Muds over time they update and add more and more areas, and that's how they get so large and swollen. And so I don't know. It's an exciting time for text adventures and for being a developer. I feel like I'm making something that there is not a lot of, which is really cool. Even though it's super niche or whatever, there aren't a lot of text adventures that still use the parser. There was the what did they call it? Hang on a second. I actually wrote this down because I wanted to go over it. Give me a second here. It was a competition, a game jam that uses that exists within the text adventure like subculture. Ectocomp 2022 just finished up. So there's a lot of like game jam text adventures you can play, and according to the results page there, the most recent competition, a lot of those games were like nostalgia games that did actually use a parser. But by and large, most text adventures these days, instead of using a parser, they take this choose your own adventure approach. I hate that. I mean, it can be its own thing, but that's not what I think of when I think of text adventure. So I don't know. That's me. Maybe I'm dumb. There's a game on Steam called The Quest, which is an incredibly generic name, but that's what it's called. And The Quest is a first-person dungeon crawler that likes to evoke, it's nostalgic. It's okay. There are better first-person dungeon crawlers, but it's okay. Well, and here's the reason I'm bringing up The Quest, because The Quest has a level editor, game editor toolkit where you can build dungeons and build maps, and there's a workshop. And the way they do it is, in the game, there are piers where you can get on a boat. And once you find a pier and get on a boat, one of the places you can go to, let's say you can go from one continent to another, but then all of the places you get off of the Steam Workshop appear there as if like, okay, now you're going to sail your boat over to XYZ level that this dude made and whatnot. I think that's a cool idea. I mean, from the very beginning, I wanted this to be an open thing that anybody could work on or fork or do what they wanted. So I like that mechanic. That's something I'd like to add. If you go to one of the port towns, you can sail a boat to user-made levels, and I think that's really neat. So that's another thing I'd like to add. But there's a lot of, I have a big list of things I'd like to add, but still working on foundation work at this point. So that's Local Mud. It's an exciting time. All right, so we're about 20 minutes in, and this is the part I like, the time I like to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. It's sponsored by EmeraldRangers.com, who is the first and foremost of Patreon subscribers. Also sponsored by Hemrock, my old buddy Hemrock, and Tecmo Balls. Thank you, gentlemen, for keeping the lights on. I offer early access to the show when I can, but it's been a few weeks since I've been able to do that. I showed off the build to the Patreon supporters. I don't do a ton of like Patreon exclusive videos or whatnot, but I did a quick like state of the show 2 weeks ago, and then this past week when the build came in, I was like, all right, let's look at this together, because I'm not quite ready to show it off, publicly yet, but the subscribers got to see it. So that's Patreon. If you want to support the show, help keep the lights on, you can jump over there and be part of the gang. Apart from that, thank you all for your time and for hanging out and enjoying some video game talk. Let's go back to the top 40 8-Bit Collective tracks and listen to the next one on the list. All right, let's see what we got here. Yeah, here we go. This is from Protozoa. This is called Trophy Party. This is track number 37 in the top 40, counting down all top 40 tracks here on TCR. Stick with us. That's a beach song if I've ever heard it. I dig it, man. Really good stuff. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is with the coming of Tigerfest. On Steam, what are the best party games? And I don't mean, I mean, more than 2 people. It's a rarity, at least for me, to be able to play any kind of Steam game local multiplayer. So anytime there's a convention or something I'm going to, it's always nice to be able to plug in the tower and have some some fun with some of the games that don't get to play very much. So as I often do, I opened a new category in Steam called Tigerfest, and I wanted to put in the games that I thought would be, that the three of us could enjoy. So I dumped in all the you don't know Jack games because those are kind of fun. I play those with my wife sometimes. Those are good for several people if you're into the quiz thing. The Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle is perfect for 3 people. I think it takes like an hour to 90 minutes to get through any one of those games. Castle Crashers, which I've still never played. Door Kickers Action Squad is 2 people max, but that's such a fun game that it might be worth it to do some controller swapping. And then, of course, Duck Game is probably the best party game on Steam, in my opinion. That only really ever gets played when I'm doing, a convention. The Duck Game usually comes out for a few minutes. I played Gauntlet, the Steam version, for the first time in the last couple days. Got that up and running. That's a fun game. I don't know if that supports 3 people, but yeah, I think so. It supports up to 4. That'd be a good party game. The Gauntlet. And what else? Guilty Gear Asuka. It's a brawler game. Supports up to 4. Not great, but I don't know. Threw it in there anyway. The original Hammerwatch supported couch multiplayer for several people. Hidden in Plain Sight. That's another classic that you can only play local multiplayer. I think Jamestown supports 4. Levelhead supports 4. Marooners is like a clone of Mario Party. It should be pretty fun. Minor Meltdown supports like 8 local multi. Monaco is a really good local multiplayer game, but for some reason that's been a hard sell for my kids, so I might want to try that one. Sneaking in and stealing things. Nidhogg is another great local multiplayer game, except Nidhogg is only 1-on-1, so that'd be controller swapping. Pac-Man Championship DX and Championship Edition 2 has a really fun party game that we could try. Shotgunning through the last few. Rivals of Ether. I mean, you got your Smash Brothers clone. River City Ransom Melee and Melee Mock and Super Sports Challenge. Those are all party games with broken multiplayer. Broken, online multiplayer. So to get a group together to, that I would love to play some River City Melee. Spelunky, perfect game for multiple people. Streets of Red. That'd be a good choice. Super IndyCarts, some good racing, and Towerfall Ascension, I think, is another great pick. Those are my choices for party games for Tiger Fest. So I rounded those up, put them in a group, started getting them all installed, and, testing them out one by one, making sure everything works, and so that's pretty dope. I gotta say, I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. When's the last time you played couch multiplayer? Think about it. Was it recently? Was it years and years ago? When's the last time you played couch multiplayer, and how did it go? When was the last time I played couch multiplayer? Tetris Attack is big in my house, so that's an exception. So I played Pokemon Puzzle League with my wife last week. I think that was the last time I played couch multiplayer, and she is very, very good at that game. So that was some pretty fierce competition, to the point where I started practicing recently. I think just last night I was playing Puzzle League on the GBA, and just trying to keep my skills up. Yeah, it's good times. I miss it. I miss couch multiplayer. It's something that it's the reason we're doing something like this is to enjoy couch multiplayer again. Maybe if that's the case, maybe Halo would be perfect for a party like this. Bring along the original Xbox and play some split screen Halo, because that's probably the most fun I've ever had playing couch multiplayer, at least in my adult life. Good times indeed. So it's Thanksgiving week and the fail bag is empty, so we're going to go ahead and call it a show. We were a day late with sick kids, so I'm doing the best we can, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Big thanks to everybody who hangs out and listens, jams to some chip tunes and whatnot. I appreciate it. Time is indeed the most valuable currency. And as you move forward into Thanksgiving this year, even if you have hard times, and sometimes maybe it feels like you don't have a whole lot to be thankful for, dig deep, because I'm sure there's something. And whatever's happening, good or bad, I'm rooting for you. I'll see you next week.